Hello everyone, welcome to week 2. This week we'll be focusing on organizational structure. I hope everybody's semester has gotten off to a good start and that everything's going well by this point. Organizational structure is one of, if not the most important topic we'll discuss in class this semester. The organizational structure literally impacts everything else that an organization does and is directly related to its effectiveness. If an organization is not structured properly, it will not be able to efficiently pursue the goals of the organization or achieve its purpose. In addition, all of the other organizational topics that we're going to talk about the rest of the semester, such as how it interacts with the environment, supervision, leadership, communication, personnel evaluation, all those things depend on the structure of the organization. So there's 3 main things that structure is supposed to do. Excuse me, hang on a minute. Structure provides the framework through which the organization's work is accomplished. So if an organization is structured properly, it's more likely that they will efficiently and effectively accomplish their goals. Second thing it does is it provides consistency, and that's through formalization and specialization. Organizations develop routines that provide for consistent behavior throughout the organization. So the framework of the structure provides for this consistency. And then, as I said just a second ago, structure affects the other organizational characteristics. So when you're reading the Giblin book just assumes that organizations are bureaucratic structures. And while the overwhelming majority of organizations within the criminal justice system are bureaucratic, there's also organic structures. And Giblin really doesn't talk much about the organic structures, but organic structures are much more fluid, and they often don't have real formalized structures. With an organic structure, the view of those organizations is that knowledge doesn't really reside anywhere. Knowledge is spread out throughout the entire organization, rather than at the top, which is what a bureaucratic structure assumes. Organic structures are much more adaptable than a bureaucratic structure. And as I'm sure you know, criminal justice organizations aren't very adaptable as organizations. They oftentimes have a very difficult time adapting to environmental conditions. And of course, there's tons of reasons why that's how it is. And we're not going to go into that right now. But the bureaucratic structure is one of the main reasons why criminal justice organizations, why criminal justice organizations have a hard time adapting. It's also important to understand the structure of the illicit organizations that criminal justice organizations have to deal with, because aspects of the criminal justice organizational structure may make it difficult for criminal justice organizations to be able to effectively address those other organizations. And I'll talk a little bit more about that toward the end here. So one of the main characteristics of structure is complexity. And organizations can vary in how complex they are. So essentially complexity is just how many parts does an organization have, how many hierarchical levels, how many specialized units, how many departments, all those kinds of things. So if we're talking about vertical complexity, that refers to how short or tall the organization is. The more vertically complex, the more layers of hierarchy exist within that organization. So bureaucratic structures and criminal justice structures are oftentimes viewed as a pyramid, where you have increased numbers of employees as you move down the pyramid. So if you're talking about vertical complexity, you have this pyramid, which allows for the chain of command to form within there, with one level supervising the level below them. So obviously there's obviously advantages to being vertically complex. We start talking about division of labor, having that clear chain of command, but there's also problems with vertical complexity, especially if we start getting real tall, regarding communication, employee motivation, satisfaction, those types of things. So you can also have horizontal complexity, and that's how many different units are present at any level of the organization. So this is referred to as occupational differentiation or functional differentiation, which essentially means that employees are separated by their job requirements or by the division in which they are situated. So if you're looking at an organizational chart, you're obviously going to have this kind of situation going on, vertically complex, and then horizontal complexity. If you pick any level in that organization and look at how many different divisions or whatever they have there, the more they have, the more horizontally complex. So then the final type of complexity is spatial complexity. And spatial complexity refers to how organizations are distributed geographically. So for example, police departments oftentimes have a number of precincts spread out throughout a city, but there is one central office or one central station that the administration works out of, and everything moves out from that. Or a State Department of Corrections would have a central location, like in Missouri, it's in Jefferson City, but they have a number of prisons located across the state. So an advantage of this is being more spatially complex. It increases the chances that organizations are able to address local issues, which is why police departments divide themselves into local precincts. So there are definitely some advantages to spatial complexity, but it also can make it more difficult to manage and coordinate all these different parts of the organization. And sometimes the outlying offices can get so involved in their own local stuff that they become fairly detached from the larger organization's mission and priorities. So that's complexity. You got vertical, horizontal, and then spatial, how things are arranged geographically. So then how does the organization coordinate all their activity and make sure that complexity doesn't hinder that performance? Well, they use several strategies. They use formalization, centralization, and span of control. Formalization is essentially just the degree to which the organization and its members are guided by written rules and procedures. For a highly formalized organization, rules and regulations encompass most aspects of organizational life. And one of the main reasons for doing this is to control employee behavior and their use of discretion. Employees that are free to make their own decisions make organizations nervous. So these policies and procedures, to at a minimum, place boundaries on employee decision making. Those of you that are currently working for CGO organizations, criminal justice organizations are generally highly formalized types of organizations. There's some police departments that have 2,000 pages worth of policy manual. That would certainly qualify as a highly formalized type of organization. All right, so then centralization. Centralization refers to where within that organization do important decisions get made. So if you're talking about a highly centralized organization, important organizational decisions are made at the top of the hierarchy. Because in a real pure bureaucracy, in a highly centralized, it's believed that all knowledge within the organization resides at the top of that organization. So in a highly centralized organization, that's where the important organizational decisions are made. If you talk about a highly decentralized organization, important decisions are made throughout the organization. There really is no central kind of brain trust kind of thing going on. Anyone, anywhere within can make decisions. Generally, organic structures are highly decentralized structures. Okay, so obviously, most organizations aren't one or the other, right? You're usually not highly centralized or highly decentralized. It's probably usually somewhere in the middle, based on a number of factors. But as a kind of general rule, though, criminal justice organizations are fairly highly centralized, right? A lot of the decisions get made at the top. All right, so then finally we have span of control. And span of control is essentially just a number of subordinates that are supervised by each supervisor. If you have a wide span of control, that means you have a large number of subordinates supervised by one supervisor. A narrow span of control means you have a small number of subordinates supervised by a single supervisor. So obviously, the more narrow the span of control, the more intensive the supervision and control can be. And span of control is then directly related to the vertical complexity of the organization. So then the last topic covered by Giblin is the organizational structure of criminal organizations. So just like legal organizations, criminal organizations generally have some type of structure. And that structure influences how they operate. So it's important to understand how criminal organizations are structured in order for criminal justice organizations to properly counteract those. So if you have a criminal organization that is very fluid and very adaptable, that may be difficult for a highly formalized, centralized criminal justice organization to develop strategies to combat them because those organizations operate completely differently. So it's really important to understand what the organization looks like that the criminal justice police agency or whoever it is trying to deal with. You know, if it's a street gang or whether it's a drug cartel, each of those will have a structure, and it's important to understand what that structure is. So I'm not going to get into the readings for this week, but please make sure you do go read the articles in the end of the chapter because they do demonstrate how some of the concepts are applied to both criminal justice and criminal organizations. And then be sure to complete the discussion board. And as always, let me know if there are any questions. And I'll see you next week.